Now, this question tests your knowledge of the use of as if or as though, and this topic is currently the most requested explanation that I have received. Okay, but take a shot at this first before I explain. In 5 seconds, let me know what your answer is. Now, the first thing you need to know is there are two different uses of as if or as though. There are two, okay? The first is it is used to describe a situation that is probably true or real. The second is it is used to describe an imaginary situation or an unreal situation. Now, let's start with the first category, which is a situation that is probably true or real. Now, in this situation, you need to use the present tense or past tense depending on the time reference of the sentence. Yes, you can either use the present tense or past tense depending on the time reference of the sentence. Now, let's take, for example, the sentence. It looks as if it's dash going to rain. Now, take a look at this sentence. It looks, right? For you to say it looks like a dash going to rain, it means that there is something that you are seeing. So it is probably true. You're seeing a cloudy day. The weather is different from the usual, right? Good. So this situation is probably true. Therefore, you need to maintain the time reference. So the verb is present tense looks. You need to maintain it. It looks as if it is going to rain. If our sentence were, it looked, past tense, we say it looked as if it was going to rain yesterday. Okay, you need to maintain the time reference. Let me give you another example. The doctor speaks as if he dash exactly what is wrong with the patient. Okay, in this situation, we can assume that it is probably true because of the context of a doctor and a patient. This is your field, you should know what is wrong with your patient, right? So we can assume that this situation is probably true. And then we maintain the time reference. So since the verb is speaks present tense, the doctor speaks as if he knows exactly what is wrong with the patient. The doctor spoke as if he knew exactly what was wrong with the patient. Now, let's move to the second category, which is the unreal or the imaginary situation. Now, in this case, you can either use the past tense or the subjunctive form of the verb be, which is were. So you can either use the past tense or were, okay, regardless of the time reference. So if your sentence is referencing the present tense, you still need to use the past tense or were. Now, stay with me. I'm going somewhere, okay? Now, you see your exams, WAEC, JAMB, GCE, NECO, they prefer to test you on the unreal or imaginary use of as if, where your expected answer is what? Past tense or where. They like to test you on the imaginary use of as if. That's why even if you go to your exam prepared for the imaginary use of as if, you will still get the answer right. Okay, that does not mean that as if cannot be used in a situation that is probably true. Okay, so now your examiners will provide a sentence like this to you. So your examiners assume that this is an imaginary situation. Okay, and so you need to use the past tense or where as the case may be. Now let's read. He spends money as if he dash a bank. He doesn't own a bank, but he's acting like it. So we need to use the past tense. And the only past tense here is option B, owned. That is why owned is the answer to this question. Now take a look at this example. Charles treats people as if he dash better than they are. Now, let's say your options include am, is, was, were. You need to use were, not was. Where. Okay? Charles treats people as if he were better than they are. Okay? So, final answer to this question is option B. Let me know if this is a better explanation in the comments. Are you ready for another as if question? Now, drop your answer in the next 5 seconds. So there are two different uses of as if. One, a situation that is probably true or real. And in this case, you need to use the present tense or past tense depending on the time reference of your sentence. Now, the second is a situation that is imaginary, that is unreal. And for this one, you need to use the past tense form of the verb or the subjunctive form of the verb be, which is were. So you either use the past tense form or were, okay? Now, most of your exams, WAEC, JAMB, GCE, NECO, they like to test you on the imaginary use of as if, where your expected answer is either the past tense form of the verb or where. Okay, and many students understand this rule, but they don't know that as if can be used in a situation that is real, and then your answer can either be present tense or past tense. Okay, so you need to understand this. So let's go back to the sentence. She speaks to the chairman as if she dash is boss. So this is quite imaginary. Okay, and because we understand that they prefer to test you on the imaginary use of as if, we can assume that this is imaginary, and you can see your options, right? Is, was, where, has been. So final answer to this question is option C, where. She speaks to the chairman as if she were his boss. This question tests how well you can interpret modal verbs. Okay, so take a shot at this in 5 seconds. Let me know what your answer is. So the important word in the sentence is would, and would is a modal verb. Now, would has different meanings, okay? For example, would can be used to make a polite request. Would you open the window, please? This is a polite request. It can be used to express a habit. For example, every evening, my grandmother would tell us stories about the village. Okay, so this is a habit in the past. Another meaning is it can be used to express a hypothetical situation. For example, I would travel if I had enough money, right? So this is an imaginary situation, a hypothetical situation. Now, from these meanings, you can tell that this sentence is expressing a habit. Bolade would make a mess of cooking the rice. This is a habit. So what does this mean? Option A, it was typical of Bolade to make a mess of the rice. This is the answer to this question because it is expressing a habit. Option B, Bolade cannot cook. The sentence is not telling us whether she's unable to cook. Okay, it says that she always or usually made a mess of cooking the rice, right? Option C, Bolade will not cook the rice. This is expressing a future action. It is expressing the future, okay? Option D, Bolade does not like cooking rice. Now, this is not the best interpretation because it is not telling us whether she likes cooking rice, right? It is telling us that she usually made a mess of cooking the rice. So final answer to this question is option A. Now, one last tip. Let us compare some of the modal verbs in the same situation. For example, say I am teaching you privately and I have given you class exercise. And then you say to me, oh, Miss Alex, I am tired. Now, if I say you should rest, it is an advice, okay? If I say you can rest, it is showing possibility. If I say you could rest, I am giving you an option. I'm stating that resting is an option. If I say you will rest, I'm expressing the future. You will do that in the future, right? If I say you would rest if you had the time, this is a hypothetical situation, an imaginary situation. You don't have that time with me. You have to do your class exercise. So these are the meanings. So you need to understand the meaning of each modal verb, right? And you can see I've used the same situation, right, to explain these modal verbs, okay? And this is what your examiners are testing. So final answer to this question is option A. This question tests your knowledge of antonyms, okay? So give this a shot. In the next 5 seconds, I want to know what your answer is. As I said earlier, examiners are testing your knowledge of antonyms, but not just antonyms, antonyms in context. So you need to be able to ask yourself this question. What is this word doing in this sentence? How is this word used in this particular sentence? What meaning does this word have in this particular sentence? Because you cannot interpret the word in isolation. You need to be able to figure out the meaning as it is used in the context. Okay, another thing I like to advise candidates is to group words using these 3 categories. The first is positive words. These are words that suggest good meaning, right? The second is negative words. These are words that suggest unpleasant meaning. Then finally, we have neutral words. These are words that are neither positive or negative. Okay, so let's go back to the question. The underlying word is sour. Okay, Idris gives me a sour look every time I pass by him. So we can tell that this word is a negative word, right, from the context. Now, the instruction says choose the option opposite in meaning to the underlying word. So we need to choose a positive word because the underlying word is negative. So we can easily eliminate option A, bad, because this is a negative word. And we can eliminate option D, sinister, because it's also a negative word. It means evil. So we are left with option B and C. Now go back to the context. Can you see look? Now, because we understand context and we know that we're trying to describe a facial expression, we know automatically that Satisfactory is not a word that can describe a facial expression, and so the best word or the perfect word is friendly. Okay, friendly is the answer to this question. When we speak of sour look, it is gloomy expression. Okay, unfriendly expression. So final answer to this question is option C, friendly. Now here is another question under antonyms. So give this a shot. Let me know what your answer is in the next 5 seconds. Okay, so we need to determine the meaning of the word acquiescing in this sentence, right? So we see the proprietor accused Uche of silently acquiescing to students' demand. Okay, there is an accusation of which Uche is silently doing something to the students' demand. So we understand that he is accepting, he is giving in, he's submitting to their demands without questioning, right? Which is not supposed to be so, right? Good. So the opposite of that will be rejecting, refusing, fighting against it, opposing, right? So the final answer to this question is what? Resisting. Submitting to is synonymous, right? Adjusting means, changing or adapting. Compromising on means giving up something for something else, right? So final answer to this question is option D, resisting. Now, grouping words using the positive, negative, or neutral category might not work for all questions under synonyms and antonyms. However, context will always help you. So you need to rely on context, right? You need to be able to interpret words looking at the context as it is used in the sentence, okay? So final answer to this question is option D. So this question tests your knowledge of synonyms. Now give it a shot in the next 5 seconds. Let me know what your answer is. Okay, so the greatness of the creator of the universe is always inexpressible to many adherents of certain faith. Now, this question is testing your knowledge of synonyms, nearest in meaning. Okay, so inexpressible is the target word, and words or phrases like the greatness, the creator of the universe, adherents of certain faith, right, gives us a clue as to what inexpressible means, right? So it tells us that, or it suggests that something is so great that words cannot fully describe it. So inexpressible, like other words beginning with the suffix in, means not expressible, like inactive, incorrect, indefinite, right? Not definite, not correct, not active. So inexpressible means not expressible. Okay, so we are looking for the synonym, the nearest meaning. So inevitable means certain to happen, right? You're certain something will happen. It's unavoidable. Okay, wonderful is very good, but this is not the answer to this question. Unbearable means unable to bear, right? Ineffable means not expressible. Okay, so final answer to this question is option D. How well can you report a speech? So drop your answer in the next 5 seconds. Now, the first thing you should do is to try to figure out the direct speech. Okay, so all you need to do is go back to the question, read the statement and the options, and try to figure out the direct speech. So yesterday, my mother asked me that. So we already have an idea that the direct speech is a question. Okay, so we know that it is, are you tired? Okay, now, when reporting a question, you can either use if or whether. Okay, it's fine. If or whether is fine. Now, the first thing that would occur is with the tense. Are changes to was. Good. The second is with you. Okay, you changes to I because of the statement. My mother asked me. So you need a subject pronoun I. Now, the third change is the arrangement of the words. Okay, usually between the verb and the subject. For a question, it is are you, verb, subject. But for a statement, it has to be subject, verb. Okay, so your subject comes first, followed by the verb. Good. So option A, if I am tired. So if is okay, the problem is what? Am. We need a past tense, right? Option B, are you tired? Are is the problem, right? We need past tense. Option C, whether is okay, but the arrangement is the problem. The arrangement between the subject and the verb. You can see the verb coming first, but we need the subject coming first, right? Now, finally, option D, if I was tired. This is the answer to this question. Option D is your final answer.